You poured that bowl of cereal this morning without thinking twice about it. Maybe it was the same brand you have been eating for 20 years, the one with the athlete on the box, the one that says heart healthy right there on the front in big green letters. You added the low-fat milk, maybe a glass of orange juice on the side, and you sat down feeling like you were doing everything right. And here's the uncomfortable part. That breakfast, the one you just had a few hours ago, may be one of the biggest reasons men over 60 are losing muscle, gaining belly fat, and feeling weak by 10 in the morning without ever understanding why. This is not about exotic superfoods. This is not about some supplement stack that costs $200 a month. This is about something hiding in plain sight on your kitchen counter, something marketed directly at health-conscious men, something the food industry has spent decades convincing you is the responsible, mature choice. And once you understand the actual mechanism of what it does to your body after 60, you're going to look at that cereal box very differently. Stay with me for the next few minutes because I'm going to walk you through exactly what is happening inside your body during the first 90 minutes after that breakfast, why it matters so much more after 60 than it did when you were 40, what a simple and cheap swap looks like, and what men who are genuinely strong and lean in their 60s and 70s are actually eating instead. And I will give you a practical checklist you can print out and put on your refrigerator door so you never have to guess again. Let us start with the core problem. Most breakfast foods marketed as healthy for men over 60 are built almost entirely around carbohydrates and very little protein. A standard serving of a popular whole grain cereal, something like a cup and a half, delivers somewhere between 2 and 5 grams of protein depending on the brand. The orange juice adds another gram or two at best. The low-fat milk adds around 8 grams if you use a full cup. So your entire breakfast, the one the box told you was a complete morning meal, delivered somewhere between 11 and 15 grams of protein total. That sounds like a reasonable number until you understand what researchers have been finding about protein and muscle synthesis in older men. There is a concept in nutrition science called the muscle protein synthesis threshold. The basic idea, and this has been studied extensively at institutions like the University of Texas Medical Branch in Galveston, is that your body needs a minimum dose of protein at a single meal to actually trigger meaningful muscle repair and growth. In younger men, that threshold is somewhere around 20 grams of high-quality protein. But in men over 60, the research suggests that number climbs to somewhere between 30 and 40 grams per meal, and sometimes higher. The reason is a phenomenon called anabolic resistance. After 60, your muscles become less sensitive to the protein signal. You need more of it to get the same response you used to get automatically. So when you eat that 11-gram cereal breakfast, your body is not getting the signal it needs to maintain muscle. It is essentially getting nothing useful for muscle preservation. And this happens every single morning, 365 days a year, and most men have no idea it is happening. Now here's where it gets more specific and more frustrating. After 60, you're already fighting a natural process called sarcopenia, which is the gradual loss of skeletal muscle that begins in your 40s and accelerates significantly after 60. Research published in journals tracking aging populations suggests men can lose somewhere between 3 and 8% of their muscle mass per decade starting in their 40s, and that rate increases after 60. Some studies tracking sedentary older men show losses even faster than that. Muscle is not just about looking strong, it is your metabolic engine. It is what keeps your resting calorie burn high. It is what stabilizes your joints and protects your knees and hips. It is what keeps you from falling, and it is what makes the difference between a man who feels 62 and a man who feels 82. And every morning that you skip the protein threshold at breakfast, you are essentially giving sarcopenia a free pass for another 24 hours. The orange juice is its own problem. And I want to spend a minute on this because a lot of men over 60 grew up being told that a glass of OJ in the morning was practically medicine. An 8-ounce glass of commercial orange juice contains around 22 grams of sugar. That is roughly the same as a can of cola, minus the carbonation. The fiber that would normally slow down the absorption of that sugar in a whole orange has been removed. So what you're getting is a fast spike in blood glucose first thing in the morning, which triggers a significant insulin response, which in a man over 60 whose insulin sensitivity is already declining compared to his younger years, sets up a pattern of energy crash, hunger, and fat storage that plays out across the entire morning. A study published in the British Medical Journal in 2013 that followed over 100,000 adults found that consumption of whole fruit was associated with a lower risk of type 2 diabetes, while consumption of fruit juice was associated with a higher risk. The fruit itself is not the problem. The juice, stripped of its fiber and consumed in liquid form, behaves very differently in your body. So you have the cereal spiking blood sugar, the juice adding to that spike, and the total protein sitting far below the threshold your aging muscles actually need. That is the breakfast mistake. It is not one thing. It is a combination of three things that all point in the same direction, and that direction is muscle loss, fat gain, and low energy by mid-morning. Now, let me tell you what men who are genuinely strong after 60 are actually doing differently. And I'm not talking about professional bodybuilders or Instagram fitness influencers. I'm talking about regular men, guys in their mid-60s and early 70s, who figured this out either through trial and error or through working with a sports dietitian or a physical therapist who understood aging physiology. The pattern is remarkably consistent. These men are eating a breakfast that delivers between 30 and 50 grams of protein within the first hour of waking. They are pairing that protein with a moderate amount of fat and a relatively small amount of slow-digesting carbohydrate, and they are skipping or dramatically reducing the fast-digesting sugars that dominate most commercial breakfast products. What does that actually look like in a real kitchen? 3 whole eggs, scrambled or fried in a teaspoon of olive oil, gives you around 18 to 20 grams of protein. Add 2 ounces of smoked salmon, which you can buy at most grocery stores for around $4 to $6 for a 3-ounce package, and you add another 12 grams. A half cup of full-fat Greek yogurt on the side adds another 9 to 10 grams. You are now at 40 to 42 grams of protein for a breakfast that took about 8 minutes to make and cost somewhere between $3 and $5 total. Compare that to the cereal and juice setup, which probably cost a similar amount and delivered a fraction of the protein. A retired construction worker in his late 60s who made this single change, swapping his cereal breakfast for an egg and protein-based morning meal, reported to his physical therapist that within 6 weeks, he noticed he was not getting the 10 o'clock energy crash he had experienced for years. He was not reaching for a snack by 9:30. His grip strength, which his doctor had been monitoring, stopped declining at his next appointment. That is one anonymous example, but it reflects what the research on protein timing and muscle preservation in older men consistently suggests is possible. Let me go a little deeper on the mechanism, because understanding why this works makes it easier to stick with it. When you eat protein, your digestive system breaks it down into amino acids. The amino acid that seems most critical for triggering muscle protein synthesis is leucine. Research from multiple institutions, including work done at Maastricht University in the Netherlands, has consistently shown that leucine acts almost like a key that unlocks the muscle-building machinery in your cells. The threshold for leucine to trigger this response is approximately 2 to 3 grams per meal. A bowl of cereal with low-fat milk might deliver somewhere around 1 gram of leucine. 3 eggs delivers around 1.5 grams. Add the smoked salmon and Greek yogurt, and you're pushing 3 grams or above, which is the territory where you're actually turning on the signal your muscles need. Eggs are one of the most leucine-dense foods available at a low cost. A dozen eggs at most grocery stores in the United States as of 2024 runs between $3 and $5 depending on your region, and whether you buy conventional or free range, that is roughly 30 to 50 cents per egg. For a food that delivers 6 grams of complete protein, including all essential amino acids, and approximately half a gram of leucine per egg, it is arguably the most cost-effective muscle preservation food available to an older man. There is also the issue of what is called the anabolic window in the morning. After a night of fasting, your body has been in a catabolic state, meaning it has been breaking down tissue, including muscle tissue, to fuel overnight metabolic processes. The first meal of the day is your opportunity to flip that switch. If your first meal is high in fast sugars and low in protein, you extend the catabolic state and add a blood sugar spike on top of it. If your first meal is high in quality protein, you trigger the anabolic response and start the day in a muscle-preserving mode. This is not a controversial idea. It is basic exercise physiology that has been understood for decades. The problem is that the breakfast food industry has never had a financial incentive to tell you this. Think about who makes money when you eat cereal every morning. The grain processing companies, the sugar suppliers, the packaging industry, the grocery store chains that give prime shelf space to the products with the biggest advertising budgets. The heart-healthy label on your cereal box was approved under a set of FDA guidelines that were established in the 1990s and are based primarily on fiber content and saturated fat content. Those guidelines were not designed with muscle preservation in aging men in mind. They were designed around cardiovascular disease risk. And even there, the science has evolved significantly since those labels were first created. A cardiologist at a major academic medical center would not necessarily tell you to stop eating cereal, but a sports medicine physician who works specifically with men over 60 on body composition and functional strength would very likely tell you that your cereal breakfast is working against your goals. The difference is the lens. Most general practitioners are not trained in geriatric nutrition or sports physiology. They are trained to manage disease. Preventing muscle loss in a 68-year-old man who is not yet sick enough to qualify as having sarcopenia is not something that shows up on a standard blood panel. This is why so many men over 60 are doing everything their doctor says and still feeling weaker every year. They are not sick enough to get the right advice. They are just slowly losing the physical capacity that makes life feel good. Let me talk about a few specific mistakes men make when they try to fix this, because the solution sounds simple, but there are some common wrong turns. The first mistake is going to a protein shake instead of real food. Protein shakes are not bad, but a lot of men over 60 reach for a whey protein shake blended with fruit juice or a banana and call it a high-protein breakfast. Depending on what you put in it, you might hit your protein target. But you're often still loading up on fast-digesting carbohydrates from the fruit, and you're missing the satiety that comes from chewing actual food. Research on appetite regulation in older adults suggests that liquid calories are less satiating than solid food calories, meaning you're more likely to feel hungry again within 90 minutes. If you use a protein shake, use it as a supplement to real food, not as a replacement for it. The second mistake is eating egg whites only and throwing away the yolk. This was popular advice for decades based on the idea that egg yolks were high in cholesterol and therefore dangerous for heart health. The American Heart Association revised its dietary cholesterol guidelines in 2015 to acknowledge that dietary cholesterol has a much weaker effect on blood cholesterol levels than previously believed for most people. The egg yolk contains fat-soluble vitamins including vitamin D and vitamin K2, choline, which is critical for brain function and muscle nerve signaling, and additional leucine. Throwing away the yolk means throwing away a significant portion of the nutritional value of the egg. Unless your doctor has specifically told you to limit dietary cholesterol due to a specific condition, there is no strong evidence-based reason to avoid whole eggs. The third mistake is adding back the sugar through condiments and extras. A man switches from cereal to eggs but then uses a tablespoon of ketchup, a glass of sweetened coffee creamer, and a piece of toast with jam. He has partially undone the benefit. The goal is not to make breakfast miserable, but if you're going to make the switch, be aware of where the sugar is sneaking back in. A tablespoon of standard ketchup contains around 4 grams of sugar. A standard flavored coffee creamer serving contains around 5 grams. These are not catastrophic numbers, but they add up across a morning. The fourth mistake is not being consistent. One high-protein breakfast a week does not move the needle on sarcopenia. This needs to be a daily habit. The research on muscle protein synthesis suggests that consistent daily protein intake distributed across meals is significantly more effective than occasional high-protein days. Think of it like brushing your teeth. You do not brush your teeth once a week and expect good dental health. You do it every day because the benefit is cumulative. Now I want to address something that comes up a lot when men over 60 start thinking about changing their breakfast habits, and that is the idea that it is too late, that the muscle they have already lost is gone for good, that the damage from decades of low-protein mornings is permanent. The research does not support that conclusion. A landmark study published in the New England Journal of Medicine in 1990 looked at frail nursing home residents with an average age of 87 who underwent a resistance training program. After just 8 weeks, participants showed significant increases in muscle strength and muscle cross-sectional area. These were not young athletes. These were elderly, frail individuals. The capacity for muscle adaptation does not disappear with age. It slows down, it becomes less efficient, it requires more protein and more stimulus to activate, but it does not disappear. More recent research, including work published in journals focused on aging and exercise science, consistently shows that men in their 60s, 70s, and even 80s can gain meaningful muscle mass and functional strength when they combine adequate protein intake with resistance exercise. The protein threshold is the nutritional foundation. Without it, even a good exercise program delivers diminished results. This is why the breakfast change matters so much. It is not just about one meal, it is about setting the biological conditions every single morning that allow your body to respond to whatever physical activity you do during the day. If you walk, if you garden, if you do bodyweight exercises, if you lift weights, all of that effort is more productive when your muscles have the protein signal they need from the first meal of the day. Let me give you a practical weekly framework because I know some men get stuck on variety. Eating eggs every single day is fine from a nutritional standpoint for most people. But if you want options, here's how you can rotate through a high-protein breakfast week without spending a lot of money or time. Monday, you do 3 scrambled eggs with a side of cottage cheese. A half cup of full-fat cottage cheese delivers around 14 grams of protein and costs about 50 cents per serving. Total protein for that breakfast is around 32 grams. Tuesday, you do a Greek yogurt bowl. Use a full cup of plain, full-fat Greek yogurt, which delivers around 17 to 20 grams of protein depending on the brand. Add 2 tablespoons of hemp seeds, which add about 6 grams of protein, and a handful of walnuts for healthy fat. You're at roughly 25 grams, which is on the lower end, so you might add a hard-boiled egg on the side to push it past 30. Wednesday, you go back to eggs. This time 2 fried eggs plus 2 ounces of leftover chicken or canned sardines. Sardines are one of the most underrated protein sources for older men. A 3 3/4 ounce can of sardines in olive oil costs around $2 and delivers around 23 grams of protein, along with a significant dose of omega-3 fatty acids, which have their own role in reducing inflammation and supporting muscle function. Thursday, you do a 2-egg omelet with a 1/4 cup of shredded cheese folded in, which adds about 7 grams of protein, plus a side of smoked salmon. Total protein lands around 35 to 38 grams. Friday, you do a simple plate of 3 hard-boiled eggs, which you can batch cook on Sunday night for the whole week, plus a cup of Greek yogurt. Fast, no cooking required, and you hit around 38 grams. Saturday and Sunday, you have more time, so you make a more substantial breakfast. A 3-egg vegetable scramble with diced peppers, onions, and a couple of ounces of ground turkey or breakfast sausage from a quality butcher can push you to 45 or 50 grams of protein. Take your time, sit down, enjoy it. None of these breakfasts require expensive ingredients. None of them require more than 15 minutes of preparation. And all of them put you above the 30-gram protein threshold that the research suggests is necessary for meaningful muscle protein synthesis in men over 60. I mentioned earlier that I would share a printable resource, and this is the right moment to bring that up. I put together a simple 1-page PDF called the Over 60 Morning Protein Protocol. It is a printable checklist that lays out the 7-day breakfast rotation I just described, the leucine threshold guide, so you know which foods actually count toward your muscle-building target, the 3 breakfast mistakes to avoid, and a quick grocery list you can take to the store. It is designed to go on your refrigerator or inside a kitchen cabinet door, so you do not have to remember any of this. You just look at the sheet. The link is in the description below this video. It is a simple, practical tool, and a lot of men have told me it is the one thing that finally made the habit stick. Now, let me go a level deeper on why this information has not reached most men over 60, because I think the answer to that question is important and a little bit maddening. The breakfast food industry in the United States spends billions of dollars annually on advertising and shelf positioning. Cereal alone is a roughly $10 billion industry in the U.S. The marketing of cereal as a healthy breakfast for adults was built largely on studies funded by cereal manufacturers themselves, particularly through the 1980s and 1990s when low-fat dietary guidelines were at their peak influence. The heart-healthy positioning was brilliant marketing because it created a halo effect that made consumers feel virtuous about eating a product that is, at its core, processed grain and sugar. The protein food industry, by contrast, eggs, meat, fish, dairy, does not have a unified marketing machine the same way processed food does. There is no single corporation with $1 billion budget telling you to eat eggs every morning. The American Egg Board does some promotion, but it is a fraction of what cereal brands spend. So the information environment around breakfast has been shaped heavily by the companies that profit most from you continuing to eat their product. This is not a conspiracy, it is just how markets work. But the result is that millions of men over 60 are making a daily nutritional choice based on marketing from 40 years ago that was never designed with their specific physiological needs in mind. There is also a generational factor. Men who are 60 to 75 today grew up in the era of low-fat dietary guidelines. The 1977 dietary goals for the United States, which were revised and expanded into the 1980 dietary guidelines, emphasized reducing fat intake and increasing carbohydrate intake. Those guidelines shaped what a generation of Americans learned to think of as healthy eating. The idea that fat was dangerous and carbohydrates were safe was deeply embedded in public health messaging for decades. We now know the picture is far more nuanced than that, but the habits formed during those years are sticky. A man who spent 30 years eating cereal because he was told it was the responsible, heart-healthy choice does not easily update that belief, especially when the cereal box still says heart-healthy on the front. The science of nutrition has moved significantly since 1977. The understanding of muscle aging, protein thresholds, leucine signaling, and anabolic resistance in older adults is largely a product of research done in the 1990s through the 2010s. It has not yet fully penetrated the mainstream health messaging that reaches most men over 60 through their doctors, through television, through grocery store labeling. You are essentially operating with outdated software. The breakfast habit you have is running on nutritional guidelines that were written before researchers fully understood what happens to muscle metabolism after 60. Updating that habit is not about being extreme or obsessive about food. It is about using the best available information to make a simple daily choice that compounds over time into a meaningfully stronger, healthier body. Let me also address the appetite issue because some men over 60 tell me they are not hungry in the morning. They have coffee, maybe a piece of toast, and they feel fine. They do not feel like eating a full protein-dense breakfast at 7 in the morning. This is actually a recognized pattern in older adults. Research suggests that appetite regulation changes with age. Older adults often experience reduced appetite in the morning, which is sometimes called the anorexia of aging in clinical literature. It is a real phenomenon, and it can work against you because it makes the low-protein breakfast feel comfortable and sufficient even when it is not meeting your physiological needs. If you are in this category, there are a few practical approaches. First, you can shift your protein-dense breakfast slightly later to 8 or 9 in the morning when your appetite may be stronger. Second, you can start with something smaller and more palatable, like a single hard-boiled egg and a small cup of Greek yogurt, and work up gradually over 2 to 3 weeks. Third, you can add a protein-dense element to whatever you're already eating rather than replacing it entirely. If you insist on having your oatmeal, make it with full-fat milk instead of water, stir in 2 tablespoons of almond butter, and add a scoop of unflavored protein powder. That single modification can push a low-protein breakfast up to 25 or 30 grams without dramatically changing what you're eating. The goal is not perfection. The goal is getting above that 30-gram threshold consistently. If you can do it 6 out of 7 mornings, you are doing far better than most men your age. I also want to mention hydration briefly, because it connects to the morning energy problem in a way most men do not realize. After 8 hours of sleep, you are mildly dehydrated. Your blood is slightly more concentrated, your muscles and brain are running on reduced fluid. A lot of the mid-morning fatigue and brain fog that men over 60 experience and attribute to age is actually a combination of blood sugar crash from a high-carb breakfast and mild dehydration from the overnight fast. Before you eat anything in the morning, drink 16 ounces of water. Just water, not coffee, not juice, just plain water. This takes about 30 seconds and costs nothing. The research on hydration and cognitive performance in older adults consistently shows meaningful improvements in alertness and concentration from simply being adequately hydrated. If you add the protein-dense breakfast on top of that, you are addressing 2 of the 3 main causes of morning weakness and fatigue simultaneously. The third cause, which I will touch on briefly, is sleep quality and testosterone. Men over 60 experience a natural decline in testosterone, and poor sleep accelerates that decline significantly. A single night of poor sleep, defined in research as less than 5 hours, can reduce testosterone levels by 10 to 15%, according to studies published in the Journal of the American Medical Association. Testosterone is directly involved in muscle protein synthesis. It is part of the hormonal signal that tells your muscles to grow and maintain themselves. If your sleep is poor, your protein breakfast will still help, but it will be working against a hormonal headwind. This is worth mentioning because some men make all the right dietary changes and still feel weak, and the missing piece is sleep. If you are waking up multiple times a night, if you snore heavily, if you feel unrefreshed in the morning regardless of how many hours you slept, talk to your doctor about a sleep study. Sleep apnea is significantly underdiagnosed in men over 60, and it is a direct contributor to muscle loss, fatigue, and poor body composition. Now, let me bring this back to the practical and give you the clearest possible summary of what to do starting tomorrow morning. First thing when you wake up, drink 16 ounces of water before you do anything else. Keep a glass or a water bottle on your nightstand so it is already there. Within the first hour of waking, eat a breakfast that contains at least 30 grams of complete protein. Use the egg-based or Greek yogurt-based options I described. Do not rely on cereal, toast, or fruit juice to meet this target. They will not get you there. If you use coffee, drink it black or with a small amount of full-fat cream. Avoid flavored creamers with added sugar. If you need sweetener, a small amount is fine, but be aware of what you're adding. Eliminate or dramatically reduce the morning orange juice. If you want something fruity, eat a whole piece of fruit like an apple or a handful of berries, which delivers fiber along with the natural sugar and has a much gentler effect on blood glucose. Do this every morning for 30 days. Just 30 days. Track how you feel at 10 in the morning. Track your energy levels. If you have access to a grip strength dynamometer, which your doctor or physical therapist may have, track your grip strength at the start and end of the 30 days. Grip strength is one of the most reliable proxy measures of overall muscle health in older men, and it responds measurably to consistent protein intake within weeks. If you want the full printable version of this protocol, the Over 60 Morning Protein Protocol PDF is linked in the description. It has the 7-day breakfast rotation, the grocery list, the leucine threshold guide, and the 3 mistakes to avoid all on one page. Print it out and put it somewhere you will see it every morning. That is the whole point of it. It removes the decision fatigue and makes the right choice the easy choice. One more thing I want to say before I close this out, and it is the part that I think matters most in the long run. The men who are strong and functional in their late 60s and 70s are not doing anything miraculous. They are not taking expensive supplements or following complicated protocols. Almost universally, when you look at what they are actually doing, it comes down to a few consistent daily habits that they have maintained without drama or obsession for years. The breakfast protein habit is one of the most foundational of those habits because it sets the biological tone for every single day. Every morning you eat a 30-plus gram protein breakfast. You're sending your body a signal. You're telling your muscles that there are resources available to maintain and rebuild. You're keeping your blood sugar stable, which keeps your energy and mood stable. You're setting yourself up to respond to whatever physical activity you do that day. And you're doing something that most men your age are not doing, which means you're accumulating an advantage that compounds quietly and powerfully over months and years. The man who makes this change at 62 and sticks with it consistently may feel dramatically different at 67 than the man who keeps pouring the cereal every morning. Not because of one magic ingredient, but because of the daily compounding effect of getting the biology right. You already know something is off. That is why you're watching this video. The mid-morning crash, the soft belly that will not respond to what used to work, the weakness in your hands and legs that you keep attributing to just getting older. Some of that is aging, but a significant portion of it is a breakfast mistake you can fix tomorrow morning for about $3. If this video gave you something useful, I want to hear about it. Drop a comment below and tell me what your current breakfast looks like. Are you in the cereal camp, the toast and coffee camp, or have you already made the switch to high-protein mornings? I read the comments and I use them to decide what to cover next. Your situation is probably shared by thousands of other men watching this channel, and your comment might be the thing that helps someone else recognize their own mistake. And if you want to go deeper on the physical side of this, the next video covers the one mobility mistake men over 60 make every morning before they even get out of bed. The thing that is quietly destroying your hip flexors and lower back and making everything else harder. It takes about 4 minutes to fix and costs nothing. That video is coming up next, and it connects directly to everything we talked about today. The link to the Over 60 Morning Protein Protocol PDF is in the description. Print it, put it on your fridge, and start tomorrow. That is all you need to do.